On to the core of Windchill and product data management. So, I've been working with PDC Software Solutions for over 20 years now. Data management's been a big focus of that time. And, we see this at so many companies around typical data management problems within organizations, okay? The big one being design data resides in multiple locations and in multiple states, okay? So if you're using shared drives, network drives is a very common thing. Then people don't want to work with that, so they take a copy of it, so they work on it remotely. Maybe with COVID, you've been working from home, so you grab a copy of everything and have it at home. So then, people are wondering, do I have the latest version? Well, I'm working on this part. Is anyone else working on it? If I make a change to this object, what will that affect? Is there something else that I don't know about? What if I want to go back and look at previous design history of that? If maybe I'm looking at the latest rev, but I want to look at a historical revision that a customer was sold. These are very typical sort of problems that we see customers and organizations facing. A limited ability to search, okay, the ability to find and reuse existing data to view that history, or really for downstream users cannot see that data early enough. There's a lot of information that gets generated by departments and organizations, and there's a lot of other people within those organizations that need to see that information, and there are issues around seeing that early enough, getting visibility of that, okay? So that's why visualization is such a key part of PLM. And the other part of that is around the processes that are used to control that data. Okay, maybe you're still using paper-based change processes. We still do see that out there. Maybe using a combination of email and other forms. Okay, but what we see is a lot of issues around people trying to understand where the process is up to. Somebody's gone on leave. What's happening with that? There's a bit of paperwork sitting on someone's desk or in someone's inbox waiting for them to approve it. The process stops and no one really knows what's happening. Okay, so that those processes are a big issue. And we're going to discuss that in some of the one of the later webinars. So these are core things that all organizations face. We see this, they're universal problems, and really PLM is a tool to help you with those problems. So what I want to dive into is some of the data management capabilities we touched on last week, and let's look at them in more detail. Okay. So one of the first ones we discussed was around requirements management. Really early on in before you even start building your designs, there's generally some sort of requirements gathering phase. To make sure that you are going to produce a product that the customer needs. So how do you capture that information? Is it in Word docs? Is it some system somewhere? How do you ensure that you're capturing that information and you're making sure that your design is meeting those requirements? If those requirements change, what effect does that have on the design? Do you have the ability to trace that? Okay, so Windchill, through its requirements and validation module, has some abilities to capture and manage those requirements and link them into the design to make sure that you're capturing that information that's flowing through correctly. Source code is a big part of most people's designs these days. It's pretty rare that we have purely mechanical products anymore. So Windchill has its own built-in source code management, the ability to manage that, and both of these products come from what was previously called Integrity, which got merged into the Windchill family a couple of years ago. So we can also manage source code and handle that through Windchill as well. Just at a high level, just to explain how that fits in. So, there's really the ability to, through the Windchill tools, to manage your source code, to manage your requirements. So there's requirements management, there's test management as well. So the whole ability to give you that traceability, reuse all of that information to trace and source all of that. And look, if you're not using Windchill for managing, there are also the ability to use connectors available with Windchill, the Windchill requirements connectors, to connect into things through the RecIF interchange format, and available out of the box solution into doors, which I know is very common out there in industry as well. Okay, so we can use Windchill to manage those requirements, but I think really what we want to focus on today, probably the core of what most of our customers really work with Windchill for PDM, is around CAD and document management. So CAD data management is a huge part. These days, I think just about everybody is producing, who's designing building parts, are using some sort of CAD tool for doing that. And so CAD data management becomes a very important part of the process. There's a lot of information generated for that. So the ability to control and manage that information, to share that information out across different departments, so that people can see that and work with that. CAD is really the heart of most companies' products these days. So the management of that is very important. So Windchill is a full multi-CAD data management tool covering, you can see the options there, both MCAD and ECAD. And I'll touch on these in a little bit more detail a bit later on in the presentation. Okay, so a big part of that is once you've got that data under control is the ability to visualize that. Okay, so for downstream users, people not in engineering, not working with those tools to basically view, mark up, comment on that information. So visualization is a key part of that in Windchill. We've got visualization for our 2D and 3D content using lightweight viewers, as well as for office documentation, which Imran will get into a little bit later on. So there's more advanced tools beyond just simple visualization. There's actually also tools available within Windchill for doing, automated validation. So things like global interference checking run as batch jobs overnight on your server, so that all of the engineering designs can be submitted. You can run those through and generate reports on all the interferences to be evaluated for solutions. So sort of form, fit, function validation reviews. So there's more than just basic visualization. There's a whole lot of tools in there for validation, and then the ability to capture that and feed that back into whether it's design reviews, change processes, whatever that might be. Okay. Document management is another big part of that. So Windchill has the ability to manage all of your product related documentation, not just your CAD data. So we can define different document types and have different sets of attributes. We really look at secure file management. We've got integrations into Office, the ability to do version comparing between documents. So really the idea is to keep your documentation in the same system, right? And a lot of customers will use things like SharePoint and other tools for managing documentation. But the beauty of having that in the one system is when you're looking to do things like baseline a design, maybe you're in a regulated industry like medical device where you're looking to produce things like a design master record or a design history file, where it's not just the CAD and drawings that are going into that, it's also all of the supporting documentation. Well, having all that documentation inside one system makes that easy to do. Whereas if you look at data scattered across multiple systems, that becomes a lot harder because now you've got to generate reports from both systems and keep them aligned. Okay. With the documentation, I did say before, there's visualization of that, as well as the ability to do more sort of more advanced document publishing collaboration. So, PDF, watermarked PDFs for secure sharing, the ability to comment and mark up those PDFs as viewables as we collaborate on our documents and work through that in these systems as well. And as I said, Imran's going to look at that in a little bit more detail later on.